was a time when the railroad served as a lifeline for prairie people, especially during the Great Depression, when relief trains from the Maritimes brought in much-needed supplies, like potatoes, apples, and something else. Something no one out here could ever quite figure out.
The Depression hit Saskatchewan harder than almost anywhere else in the world. Windstorms swept in, drying up the prairie soil. Hard times also blew in, drying up the jobs. With no money and no crops, some people had trouble finding enough to eat.
And if we didn't have food at the table, we'd chip in from the neighbors. Everybody was helping each other out. They were quite closely knit neighborhoods back then, and each one would help the other family out.
Gordon McLeod was raised on a farm near Elfross. For a family with 6 growing boys, having enough food was a concern during the Dirty 30s.
I never heard of it called the Dirty 30s till I came out here, out west. Down there, it was usually referred to as hard times.
Art Vesey spent the 30s growing up on the docks of Prince Edward Island. The Depression was also felt in the fishing villages on the East Coast. But when people there heard what was happening out west, they decided to help. They sent what they had, and what they had was cod.
Well, I thought that was great because, we enjoyed it. A favorite meal of ours was salt cod, turnip, and new potatoes. You couldn't beat it.
The fish equivalent of beef jerky, salt cod was hard as rock, gray as ash, and stunk like, well, old fish. But it traveled well, so the cod was loaded onto boxcars and sent to Saskatchewan.
When I first saw the codfish, I wasn't too sure what it was really to start with.
Gordon McLeod used to head into town with his father when the relief trains arrived in Elfross.
And they would phone out from town and tell people that the boxcar was coming in, and everybody would go in with flour bags and stuff and fill a couple of bags. And I just forget how much codfish we got.
Gordon's mother didn't have a clue what to do with the strange stuff her husband and son had brought home.
She finally figured out to soak it in milk overnight and fry it the next morning or the next day for dinner, or bake it, one or the other.
It seemed so simple to me how they cooked it, but they did all kinds of weird things with salt cod. Boil the blazes out of it and all kinds of things. Weird things. Because codfish, you just soak it, simmer it for a short time and eat it. It's a very simple thing to make.
But it wasn't simple for the thousands of prairie people who'd received this seafood treat.
I just knew that it was disgusting. I wasn't interested in it.
I brought the stuff into my wife, and I showed her what we got. What she said, what's that thing?
It did have a bad smell, and maybe I was turned off even before we got to the table.
I remember that cod was tougher than shoe leather, and we used to have to toast it in the oven and eat it.
That's when the folklore surrounding salt cod got started. Stories went around that people were using the dried fish as shingles on their barns, or salt licks for cattle, or even as snowshoes.
And another story was you put it on a slab of poplar and you put the cod on it and put the celery and some carrots on it and cook it and then throw the cod away and eat the board.
Were the tales true? No one knows. But the Maritimers didn't see the humor.
I think they'd be very disappointed that this happened. And I've learned since that what they did, they should have sent a recipe with it, because there's nothing simpler.
For Gordon McLeod and his family, salt cod was no joke. It was a lifesaver.
I didn't really mind eating the codfish. When I think back, why they sent it was perhaps that's all they had to offer us was some salt cod.
This piece of salt cod was discovered in an attic a few years ago. It's part of the shipments that were sent here in the 1930s. It proves how long salt cod can last, and it looks every bit as appetizing today as it must have back then. I'm Bill Wazer.